Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside of Denver, Colorado, an unremarkable house stood on a tree-lined street. Gray siding, a well-maintained lawn, and white shutters framed the front windows. Any passerby would dismiss it as just another family home. But for the residents of Maplewood Drive, life was about to take a sinister turn. It was a cold evening in November 2010 when the unthinkable happened. Lisa Thompson, a vibrant 35-year-old mother of two, was reported missing by her husband, Eric. As night fell, neighbors witnessed the once bustling household fall silent. Eric's frantic calls to Lisa went unanswered, a growing dread settling over both him and those who knew them. It wasn't like Lisa to disappear. She was a devoted wife, an active member of the community, and an organizer of their daughter's school events. The local police department responded promptly, sending officers to interview Eric. He described the family's routine. Lisa had taken the kids to school that morning, then stopped by her favorite cafe for a quick coffee. She was last seen leaving the cafe around mid-morning. As investigators began piecing together Lisa's whereabouts, they couldn't ignore the sense of urgency gripping the neighborhood. The next day, a search was launched, with volunteers flooding the area armed with flyers bearing Lisa's smiling face. Neighbors whispered stories of her kindness, their voices laced with apprehension. As the sun set on that second day, the atmosphere thickened. The community's fears began to crystallize. What had happened to Lisa Thompson? What darkened the doorways of their safe little world? The investigation was only just beginning, but the echoes of uncertainty would soon reverberate far beyond Maplewood Drive. The victim, Lisa Thompson, was more than just a devoted mother and wife. She was the embodiment of resilience. Born and raised in Denver, her childhood was filled with playful laughter and the warmth of a close-knit family. Lisa was the type of person who could instantly light up a room with her infectious smile. She loved arts and crafts, often filling the house with splashes of color from her children's projects. Her passions extended beyond her home. She was actively involved in local charities, seeking to uplift those in need. Yet beneath her radiant facade lay a complexity unknown to many. In her teenage years, Lisa battled with anxiety, a silent struggle that ebbed and flowed over the years. Therapy had helped, but the shadows still flickered at the corners of her mind. She often relied on her supportive husband, Eric, who had become her rock, sharing in both her joys and her fears. As the investigation into her disappearance unfolded, detectives delved deep into every facet of her life. Friends described her as fiercely protective of her children, a quality that sometimes led to clashes with other parents. A few speculated that this might have created tension within the neighborhood, but nothing concrete emerged to suggest malice. Instead, they remembered her infectious enthusiasm during bake sales and the countless hours she dedicated to planning school events. The children, Lily and Jacob, unaware of the gravity of the situation, filled the living room with their innocent laughter, a stark contrast to the panic simmering beneath the surface. The detectives spoke to them with gentle care, desperate for any clue that could lead them to their mother. But the truth was that the children had only one worry. When would Mommy come home? Each passing day tightened the noose of fear around their small hearts, echoing the sentiments of a community eager to return to normalcy, yet terrified of what lingered in the shadows. The crime scene, As the week wore on, the search for Lisa intensified. Investigators, armed with flashlights and a steadfast determination, scoured the nearby parks and wooded areas surrounding the neighborhood, eyes peeled for any sign of the missing mother. But it wasn't until a less traveled path behind the local school that fate would finally intervene. On a chilly November afternoon, a pair of hikers stumbled upon an unusual sight. Off the trail, partially concealed by thorny underbrush, lay the lifeless body of a woman. The discovery sent shockwaves through the local police department. A rush of uniforms flooded the scene, cordoning off the area as they battled to maintain control in the face of mounting hysteria from concerned onlookers. Once the victim was confirmed to be Lisa Thompson, the scene transformed. The flurry of official activity painted a vivid picture of gravity and anguish. Crime scene investigators donned their blue gloves and white jumpsuits, meticulously documenting every detail. The setting was quiet except for the rustling leaves overhead and the muffled sounds of approaching sirens. In the golden light of the autumn sun, Lisa's body was discovered in a clearing, her clothes disheveled, an unsettling contrast to her previous life of vibrance. The medical examiner later confirmed her cause of death as blunt force trauma, revealing a grim reality. This was not an accident, but a deliberate act of violence. As detectives pored over every inch of the crime scene, they found a few pieces of evidence: a broken bracelet lying a few feet away, and a smudge of lipstick near where she had been found. Each object was carefully bagged and labeled, whispering long-held secrets that might lead to an arrest amidst the brutality of the murder. During that uneasy moment, the gravity of crime settled not just in the dirt of the forest floor, but in the hearts of those who called Maplewood Drive home. The sense of safety had been irrevocably shattered, replaced by an unsettling tension that would linger long after the sunlight faded. The early investigation. With Lisa's tragic death confirmed, detectives initiated a dual approach, a delicate task of gathering information while providing support to the Thompson family. As the news spread through the community, the sense of disbelief morphed into anger mixed with a fierce need for justice. Neighbors began to rally, leaving flowers at the Thompson home, transforming their front porch into a memorial. Yet behind closed doors, the investigation unfolded. Intense meetings, initial suspects, and painstaking interviews. Detective Sarah Mills stood at the forefront, her eyes sharp with focus, fracture lines of fatigue hinting at sleepless nights. She and her partner, Detective Mark Reyes, were determined to leave no stone unturned. Together, they combed through Lisa's last known movements, constructing a timeline that revealed familiar patterns and curious gaps. The initial interviews provided an array of leads. Friends and acquaintances described Eric as a loving father, but some murmurs hinted at arguments within the marriage. Witnesses at the cafe where Lisa had been last seen confirmed her cheery demeanor, but there were mentions of a mysterious man lingering outside, a tall figure with a baseball cap who seemed to watch her leave. Detectives made a note to investigate further. In parallel, they scrutinized Lisa's social media accounts. Love-filled posts about family life blended with hints of vulnerability. An outsider could view the rosy picture as idyllic, unaware of the cracks that sometimes form beneath the surface. Was there a darker undercurrent? Harassment from an ex? Or was someone harboring unrequited feelings for her? As the detectives focused their efforts on unraveling the mystery of Lisa's murder, they made a crucial discovery. A missed call on Lisa's phone just hours before she disappeared. The number was unfamiliar. Unable to ignore the urgency, they initiated a tracing order to seek out the owner of that call. The threads of evidence began to intertwine, leading them deeper into the tangled web that was Lisa's life. And with each piece of new information, the fear and anxiety gripping the community continued to mount, weaving a gripping tale of intrigue and heartbreak. The dead ends. As the investigation progressed, shadows of uncertainty crept into the hearts of both detectives and the community. With each passing day, their initial leads began to wither, fading like wisps of smoke. The number traced back to a local area code turned out to belong to a telemarketer. A dead end that left Detective Mills and Detective Reyes feeling more frustrated than before. Undeterred, they ramped up their efforts, determined to ensure Lisa's voice was not lost in the void. Interviews with acquaintances, friends, and even those who merely crossed paths, with Lisa yielded the same resounding refrain. She'd been well-liked, almost universally adored. Yet connections that seemed promising fizzled quickly. Her closest friends reported that she'd never mentioned any feelings of fear or harassment. What could have changed in the days leading up to her disappearance? One particularly chilling afternoon, while poring through surveillance footage from the cafe and nearby intersections, Mills spotted a fleeting figure, the man from the cafe, leaning against a lamppost just moments after Lisa left. His jacket obscured most of his features, but the familiar baseball cap made him unmistakable. Yet, in an age where cameras were ubiquitous, finding this man proved challenging. Security teams found no other footage of him post-cafe, and attempts to identify him through facial recognition software met with silence. Contacting Lisa's family for more background, Mills learned of a complicated relationship with a high school ex-boyfriend. In interviewing him, he appeared disheveled and anxious. Yet his alibi checked out, and once again, they hit the wall of dead ends. Hours of detective work unraveled into an unsettling sense that they were chasing shadows. During one such early evening, a tip came through, a promise of clarity that quickly evaporated. A neighbor claimed to have seen Lisa arguing with a woman outside her home shortly before her disappearance. Yet when the detectives canvassed the area, that neighbor seemed unable to recall anything beyond vague details, her demeanor swirling with doubt that only deepened the mystery. The walls of investigation began to feel more like cages, trapping Lisa's story rather than unraveling it, leaving the detectives burdened with the question: who would want to harm a woman whose light had touched so many? A break in the case, just as the weight of dead ends began to cast long shadows over the investigation. A break in the case emerged in an unexpected way. A local journalist named Jenna Lee, who had been following the story since Lisa's disappearance, received an anonymous tip late one night. The voice on the line was shaky, almost shrouded in fear. "I saw her," the caller confessed, "and I know what happened." Jenna immediately alerted the police, and Detectives Mills and Reyes met her at the station as dawn broke. There was an added urgency in their movements. This could be the vital lead they had been waiting for. They arranged for an interview with the caller, a man named Kevin, who said he had seen a woman resembling Lisa near a wooded area far from where she normally traveled. Eyewitnesses had previously characterized Lisa's last known days as almost mundane, but Kevin's sudden entry turned the tide. As he spoke with an anxious tremor, he recounted that on the morning Lisa went missing, he had been hiking alone. He described witnessing a woman matching Lisa's description, arguing with a man in the shadows of the trees. Vivid details interspersed with memories of fear. Kevin claimed he'd overheard snippets of the conversation, but had been too afraid to intervene, frozen by a mix of confusion and caution. The man had seemed angry, his words barely more than a low snarl. Something about not being able to escape, Kevin stammered, pulling at the sleeves of his sweatshirt. I thought it was just some lover's quarrel, you know. But afterward, when I heard she went missing, every word from Kevin seemed to weave a tapestry of urgency. And with each detail shared, the detectives began to map out new leads. They quickly connected with Kevin, arranging to show him surveillance photos of known individuals in the area that matched his description of the man. The moment held tension as the air thickened with anticipation. Enough pieces had fallen into place for the investigators. They felt the spark of possibility igniting amidst the darkness. As Kevin's memories began unraveling the threads of that fateful morning, a renewed sense of purpose washed over Mills and Reyes. They were wresting the case back from uncertainty. The specters of Lisa's fate seemed tentative yet real, with answers now flickering just beyond reach, waiting to be uncovered. The suspect. In the days following Kevin's revelation, the detectives turned their attention to the man he had described. They expanded their search criteria, utilizing databases to uncover individuals with histories of violence or harassment in the area. As they combed through mugshots and records, one name kept surfacing: David Willis. David was a 37-year-old contractor living just a few blocks from the Thompson family. He had been previously charged with domestic violence but had no convictions. Neighbors described him as reclusive and temperamental, known to lurk around the neighborhood with an air of agitation. He had also been spotted at the cafe on the day Lisa disappeared, albeit no one recalled interactions between them. Detectives Mills and Reyes found David in his rundown apartment filled with discarded furniture and buzzing with the sounds of a malfunctioning refrigerator. Despite the disheveled surroundings, there was an unnerving calmness about him. When questioned about Lisa, he feigned ignorance. His eyes darted to the corner of the room, avoiding direct contact. "I barely knew her," he shrugged, a hint of irritation in his voice. Yet Mills noted the subtle nervousness that hinted at deeper truth beneath his bravado. With a warrant approved, they searched David's apartment, a harrowing journey through a place that told stories of its own. Among the clutter, they discovered Lisa's broken bracelet hidden beneath an old rug. The find sent chills of recognition through both detectives, the evidence too compelling to dismiss. Upon extracting that crucial item, they brought David back in for further questioning. The atmosphere thickened with tension, the investigative team chipping away at the wall of bravado he had constructed. As they presented the bracelet, David's facade began to crack, exposing frayed edges of anger beneath. His alibis wobbled, conflicting statements began to emerge, and suddenly, the man who seemed so ordinary became a shadowy figure fraught with suspicion. In that dimly lit interrogation room, the detectives sifted through his history. They confronted him with descriptions of the argument Kevin had seen, demanding explanations. As the hours trickled by, David's story dissolved. Anger swirled in the air, weaving despair around the tale of what might have transpired that fateful day. The simple, serene life of Maplewood Drive was now stained with suspicion, and the detectives understood they stood on the precipice of potentially unearthing the truth behind Lisa's tragic fate. If only they could break through the web of lies woven tightly around David Willis. The trial. Months of meticulous preparation culminated in a day filled with a palpable sense of gravity. The trial of David Willis began on a blustery morning in March. The courtroom, filled with family, friends, and community members, buzzed with the underlying tension of collective grief and hope for justice. Lisa Thompson's absence loomed larger than life, a devastating shadow hanging over everyone involved. Detective Mills, along with Reyes, found themselves seated behind the prosecution, each moment weighing heavily with the reality of what had transpired. The air was thick with anticipation as the judge entered and settled into place. When the proceedings commenced, the crisp sound of the gavel pierced the somber atmosphere, punctuating the beginning of a deeply emotional journey. The prosecution meticulously outlined their case, introducing evidence that spoke for Lisa in the way she no longer could. The bruised wrist where her bracelet had broken, the graphic photos of the crime scene, and Kevin's haunting testimony. Each witness recounted their memories of Lisa's vibrant spirit, cutting deep through the assembled crowd. Defense attorney Richard Phelps was equally determined, suggesting that circumstantial evidence could not definitively link David to Lisa's murder. He painted a picture of a misunderstood man who had merely been in the wrong place at the wrong time, challenging the forensic evidence with slick words designed to sow doubt. His arguments twisted like dark vines, threatening to choke out the truth. The turning point came when the prosecution called David to the stand. There was an electricity in the air. The man accused of silencing Lisa was now given the microphone. But under the weight of cross-examination, the cracks that had once appeared during his interrogation widened. The detectives had worked to personalize the evidence, creating a narrative to guide the jury through the details of that fateful day. As Mills presented records of his troubling past and the broken relationships that had pushed David to the brink, the atmosphere thickened. Whispers of disbelief rippled through the courtroom as the jury pondered the full weight of the evidence. After days of intense testimony, the case rested in their hands like a fragile glass ornament, teetering on the edge of finality. When the jury returned to deliver their verdict, hearts pounded in synchronized anticipation. The room exhaled collectively as the foreman spoke. "We find the defendant, David Willis, guilty of second-degree murder." A wave of relief washed over those, mingled with sorrow for a life lost too soon. The guilty verdict reverberated through the community, allowing for a moment of closure. But as they looked back at the empty space left by Lisa, it became evident. Healing would take time, but the truth had finally found its voice. The aftermath. In the wake of the verdict, the atmosphere in the small community of Maplewood Drive shifted almost imperceptibly. A somber sense of relief lingered, mingled with an unresolved grief that served as a constant reminder of the loss they had endured. Lisa's family faced the dual burden of living with the pain of absence while grappling with the invasive nature of their newfound reality. The community, while marked by the tragedy, began to heal, yet the scars remained etched deep within their memories. Detective Mills often found herself reflecting on the weeks following the trial. She had been a witness not only to the profound effects of Lisa's murder, but also to the resilience of a community united in the face of tragedy. Vigil celebrated Lisa's life, weaving her memory into the very fabric of Maplewood Drive. The town square was adorned with flowers and photographs, reminders of the woman whose spirit had brought warmth to so many. In the Thompson household, life adjusted to a new normal. Eric struggled with his role as a single father, grappling with the void that Lisa left behind. He embraced the love and support of the community. But the weight of solitude bore heavily on him. Children's laughter echoed through the halls of their home, but they were often accompanied by moments of silence, a bittersweet reminder of the mother they missed. As for Mills, grappling with her own feelings about the case was a daily reality. She pored over case notes, attempting to make sense of how the investigation had unfolded. She kept Lisa's photo on her desk, a solemn reminder of why she had chosen this line of work to seek justice for the victims who could not speak for themselves. While the court had rendered a verdict, Mills understood that justice often extended far beyond the confines of a courtroom. With the years stretching ahead, the community of Maplewood Drive began to mount initiatives in Lisa's memory, fueling campaigns aimed at raising awareness of domestic violence, pledging to ensure such tragedies would be confronted before they could escalate. The lessons learned in the aftermath of the crime became guiding principles for many, sparking conversations where silence had once ruled. Rebuilding their lives, the residents forged ahead, holding on to hope that one day, laughter would fill their communities. Again, laughter, intertwined with memories woven with strength. Life had dealt them a difficult hand, but as they looked to the future, they understood that resilience could shine brighter than darkness, illuminating a path toward healing, honor, and remembrance. Reflection. Time passed, and the echoes of the trial began to settle into the chambers of memory. The milestones of life unfolded around the Thompson family birthday parties, school events, and quiet moments of introspection. Each occasion served as both a celebration and a bittersweet reminder of Lisa's absence. The grief never truly vanished. It transformed into a quiet companion that walked alongside them. Eric, still navigating the path of single parenthood, found strength through honesty. He spoke to Lily and Jacob about their mother, sharing stories that painted vivid pictures of her laughter, her dedication, the love that had permeated their home. She would have loved this, he often said, unable to hide the emotion caught in his throat. The children learned to cherish the memories without allowing the past to color their future entirely. Detective Mills, too, continued to reflect on the lessons learned during the investigation. The case had sharpened her resolve, illuminating the dark corners of human behavior. It was one thing to solve a crime, but quite another to witness the domino effects on families and communities. Each case became a reminder of the fragility of life, how quickly everything could change, urging her to advocate for awareness in her ongoing work. In the quiet moments when the weight of loss pressed heavily on their hearts, both the Thompson family and Mills realized that even in sorrow, there exists a flicker of hope. Lisa's light could never be extinguished. It lived on in their memories and actions, spurring them to fight against the silence that often accompanies violence. With every shared smile and every tear shed, they chose to honor her by making lives just a little brighter, hoping to create a world where love, connection, and safety triumphed over darkness.